Okay, greetings. This is Mr. C, and welcome to a short video on using Google Sheets to make a scatter plot. Okay, so as you can see here, I have opened as yet an untitled spreadsheet in my Google Drive. And if you have a Google account or Gmail account, you have a Google Drive. Most people access it on a regular basis, but it's you can just add a new document within your Drive or go to Google Sheets. I think it's easier just to log into your Google Drive and go from there. So you would of course want to save your spreadsheet because this would contain your data. And the first thing that I want to impress upon you is that for all the pretty charts and graphs you might develop, they all come from your data. So your data are the things that are going to need to be saved above all else. You can always generate a graph from data, but you can't go back the other way. So make sure that your data is saved and that you know where it is, and don't stress if you lose a graph. You can always make a new one. The process is very quick. All right, so that being said, let's jump into a scatter plot. Why would you use a scatter plot? Very commonly used graphical representation of data, and it's used to see if there are trends in a large number of data points. And the most classic example that I can think of is taking multiple data points over time. And so anytime you have an x-axis that is time, days, minutes, hours, whatever, and you're plotting some parameter over time, oftentimes, especially in a experiment that you're going to design, a scatter plot's a great way to represent that. So here I have this data set that I'm going to highlight. All right, and I'm going to say that this top row is going to be my time, my x-axis. I'm going to say it's going to be, let's say, days. And underneath this, these data points here are going to represent the number of organisms that have grown over time, for example. Okay, so once I've highlighted my data, and I know that this top row, okay, which here is row number 2, are going to represent my time values. That's going to help me conceptualize what I want this graph to look like. And I'm going to go up here to this icon, Insert Chart. You can also go Insert and go down to Chart, but there's a button directly on the menu here, so I think it's just easier to click on that. And you might come up with something like this. It's not the correct type of chart, obviously, for the data you have. And you have a menu on the left with the start, the types of charts, and your customization, and then what it looks like as you make the various changes on the right. So let's go ahead and say, well, I'm going to use number, let's click to row choose. No, switch rows and columns. Oops, there we go. Nope, that's what I want. I have the data identified, okay, already, and I want to make sure that I have the x-axis going from 1 all the way up to, what is it, about 8 or so, okay, because that's the number of days. And then, of course, the number of organisms on the y-axis is going up to 80, which will encompass my 75, okay? And then now that I've got that particular, the axes are looking pretty good, I'm going to choose the type of chart that I want. And down here, you'll see scatter. And if I click the one on the top, okay, you'll see that it has a nice scatter chart. The one on the bottom I don't think is quite as, it's a bubble chart, and it's used for a slightly different purpose. I think a scatter chart is more appropriate here. And that's what I'm going to start with. Okay, so you have identified the type of chart that you're going to use. Okay, and now I'm going to customize it. And with all of these chart options, you have a variety of customization. So the first thing, you want to have your chart title. So this is number of per day, okay, or however you want to deal with it. You can change the color. Okay, all of these parameters on your chart will be pretty much infinitely modifiable depending on what you're looking for. I don't actually need a legend on this one. You can have a legend if you would like. Okay, in this case, I'm going to, and your legend is over here, this series of data. but I'm going to actually get rid of it. I don't want a legend. Legends are very helpful if you have multiple series of data, multiple lines. Then you might want to use a legend. I'm not going to use one. My background, you can change the background if you want. I don't think this is terribly important. I might just leave it like that for now. Okay, your horizontal axis, you definitely want this to be time in days. Okay? And then if you change that to your left vertical, you want that to be number of organisms. Okay? And you can, again, you can adjust the font and the color however you see fit. Now the last thing I'm going to suggest is when you come down, you have the option of adding a trend line. Now I want you to be careful. Not all data have trends. I think it's obvious in this case that the data clearly show this increasing trend. You see the upward curving. So you have several options. If you clicked linear, yeah, it doesn't look so great. Not a great data fit. I happen to know that probably exponential for this one tends to look a little bit better. And so again, it'll give you the equation of the line as it does its regression. But you don't want to just randomly add a trend line if it's not appropriate to do so. So you might want to check with your teacher or somebody before you go adding a trend line so that it's actually meaningful and helps with the interpretation of your data. Okay. Once again, at this point, you would be able to say, I am pretty much finished, and I can insert the chart, and there it is. You can drag it anywhere you want. You can take a screenshot of it. You can print it. You can do whatever. But remember that the chart comes from the data, all right? And your data is the part that needs to be saved. You can always regenerate this graph in a few minutes. It probably takes you a while to generate data. So remember, the data is the important part, but that's how to generate a scatter plot in Google Sheets.